I never thought a simple arrangement would lead to the biggest emotional upheaval of my life. But that's exactly what happened the night I agreed to share my apartment with my best friend, and everything changed when I met the man my sister was about to marry. Jamie sat on the edge of his couch, staring blankly at the scattered remnants of his life. The apartment was a chaotic mix of mismatched furniture and half-unpacked boxes, a reflection of his current emotional state. As he absent-mindedly fiddled with a frayed cushion, he felt the familiar weight of loneliness pressing down on him. His sister Lily's wedding was just weeks away, and the thought of it filled him with a mix of anxiety and dread. The soft hum of the air conditioner was the only sound in the room, amplifying the silence that enveloped him. He glanced at his phone for what felt like the 100th time, hoping for a message from his best friend Sam. They had been inseparable since childhood, navigating the ups and downs of life together. Sam had always been his rock, but lately, Jamie felt a shift in their dynamic, a tension that lingered just beneath the surface. When Sam finally walked in, a takeout bag in hand and a bright smile on his face, Jamie felt a flicker of relief. "Hey, I brought your favorite," Sam said, tossing the bag onto the coffee table. He plopped down next to Jamie, his casual demeanor instantly making the room feel warmer. "Thanks," Jamie replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. As they dug into their food, Jamie couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. He watched Sam as he animatedly recounted stories from work, laughter spilling from his lips like music. But Jamie's mind wandered to thoughts of Lily and her fiancé Mark. Mark was everything Lily had ever wanted: handsome, charming, and successful. Jamie had always liked him well enough, but now that he was about to become family, things felt different. There was an unspoken connection between Mark and Jamie that made him uneasy. It was as if every glance they shared held a hidden meaning. "Are you sure you're okay?" Sam asked suddenly, breaking through Jamie's thoughts. His brow furrowed with concern as he studied Jamie's face. "Yeah," Jamie lied too quickly. "Just thinking about the wedding." Sam raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further. Instead, he changed the subject to something lighthearted, his latest misadventures at work, and for a moment, Jamie felt himself relax. But as they talked and laughed together, he couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy mixed with something else entirely whenever Mark's name came up. Later that night, after dinner and another round of laughter-filled conversations, Jamie found himself lying awake in bed. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across his room. He stared at the ceiling, thoughts racing through his mind like an endless loop. What if Mark wasn't just perfect for Lily? What if he was perfect for Jamie too? The realization sent a shiver down his spine. He rolled over to face the wall, trying to push those thoughts away. But deep down, he knew they wouldn't go away so easily. That as sleep finally began to claim him, one thought lingered. How could he possibly navigate this tangled web of emotions without hurting anyone he loved? The days leading up to Lily's wedding felt like a whirlwind, each moment filled with preparations and excitement. Jamie found himself caught in the chaos, helping his sister plan every detail of her big day. The closer they got to the wedding, the more he felt like an outsider in his own life. One afternoon, Jamie and Lily were sprawled on the floor of their favorite cafe, surrounded by swatches of fabric and a mountain of wedding magazines. Lily was animatedly discussing her vision for the ceremony, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I want everything to be perfect, Jamie. The flowers need to be just right, and the venue, oh, it has to be magical." Jamie smiled at her enthusiasm, but inside, he felt a knot tightening in his stomach. "You know it will be perfect," he said, trying to sound reassuring. "You've thought of everything." Lily's laughter rang out, bright and infectious. "I just can't believe I'm getting married. It feels surreal." She paused, her expression shifting slightly as she looked at him. "You're happy for me, right?" "Of course," Jamie replied quickly. But as he watched her face light up with anticipation for her future with Mark, he couldn't help but feel a pang of something darker, envy mixed with fear. Later that week, Jamie found himself at a family dinner where Mark was also invited. The atmosphere was lively, filled with laughter and chatter as they all gathered around the table. Jamie tried to focus on the conversations around him, but his attention kept drifting to Mark. He was effortlessly charming, engaging everyone with his stories and jokes that as the evening wore on, Jamie found himself seated across from Mark. Their eyes met more than once during dinner, and each time sent a jolt of electricity through Jamie's body. He felt a mix of excitement and dread. He wanted to know Mark better, but feared what that might mean. After dinner, as people began to disperse into smaller groups, Jamie found himself standing alone on the balcony for some fresh air. He leaned against the railing, trying to calm his racing thoughts when Mark stepped outside. "Hey," Mark said casually, leaning beside him. "Nice night, isn't it?" "Yeah," Jamie replied, forcing himself to meet Mark's gaze. "It's beautiful out here." They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of laughter from inside fading into the background. Jamie could feel the tension building between them, something unspoken yet palpable. "Lily is really excited about the wedding," Mark said after a beat. "She deserves all the happiness in the world." "Yeah," Jamie agreed quietly. "She really does." Mark turned to look at him more intently. "And you? You're okay with everything? It must be hard for you." Jamie swallowed hard, feeling exposed under Mark's gaze. I'm happy for her," he managed to say. Mark nodded slowly, as if weighing his words carefully. "You're a good brother." The compliment hung in the air between them like a delicate thread connecting their hearts. A thread that felt dangerously close to snapping. As they stood there under the stars, Jamie felt an overwhelming urge to confess his feelings but held back at the last moment. Instead, he simply nodded and smiled weakly. The night ended too soon for Jamie's liking. As he returned inside to join the others, he couldn't shake off the feeling that something significant had shifted between him and Mark. Something that could change everything in the days that followed. Jamie found himself consumed by confusion and longing. The wedding preparations continued at full speed while his internal struggle deepened. He wanted to be happy for Lily, but couldn't ignore the feelings stirring within him every time he saw Mark. Each interaction felt charged with unspoken words and emotions that threatened to spill over at any moment. And as the wedding day approached with relentless speed, Jamie knew he had to confront his feelings before it was too late. The days blurred together as the wedding approached, each moment filled with a mix of excitement and dread. Jamie found himself caught in a whirlwind of activities, from finalizing seating arrangements to helping Lily choose the perfect flowers. Yet, amidst the chaos, his thoughts were consumed by Mark. One afternoon, Jamie and Sam decided to take a break from wedding planning and grab coffee at their favorite cafe. As they settled into a cozy corner booth, Jamie couldn't shake the feeling of being on edge. Sam noticed immediately. "You've been quiet today. What's going on?" Jamie hesitated, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "It's just the wedding is coming up fast, and I feel like I'm losing myself in all of this," he admitted. Sam leaned back, studying Jamie with concern. "You're always there for everyone else, Jamie. But what about you? What do you want?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Jamie opened his mouth to respond, but found no words. Instead, he took a deep breath and changed the subject, knowing that Sam wouldn't let it go easily. Later that evening, Jamie found himself lying in bed, staring at the ceiling as thoughts raced through his mind. He replayed moments from the past few weeks, every shared glance with Mark, every conversation that felt charged with meaning. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how deeply he had fallen for him. Flashbacks flooded his mind, childhood memories of him and Lily playing in their backyard while their parents watched nearby. Moments when he had always been the protector, ensuring Lily was happy and safe. But now that protective instinct felt twisted into something more complicated. The next day was Lily's bridal shower, and Jamie was determined to put on a brave face. The event was held at a beautiful venue adorned with flowers and fairy lights, creating an atmosphere of pure joy. As guests arrived, laughter filled the air, and Jamie tried to immerse himself in the festivities. But as he moved through the crowd, he couldn't help but feel out of place. He watched Lily shine as she opened gifts and chatted with friends, her happiness infectious yet bittersweet for him. And then there was Mark, handsome and charming as ever, who seemed to draw everyone's attention effortlessly. At one point during the shower, Jamie found himself standing off to the side as Mark engaged with some of Lily's friends. They laughed at his jokes, their eyes sparkling with admiration. Jamie's heart sank as he realized how easy it was for Mark to be adored by everyone around him. Just then, Sam appeared beside him, sensing his turmoil. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," Jamie replied too quickly again. "Just enjoying the party." Sam raised an eyebrow, but didn't push further. Instead, he grabbed a plate of snacks and gestured toward a quieter corner of the room. "Let's get some food." As they moved away from the crowd, Jamie felt a wave of relief wash over him. They settled at a small table where they could talk without distraction. "I can see it in your eyes," Sam said softly after a moment of silence. "You're not fine." Jamie sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I don't know what to do, Sam," he confessed finally. "I didn't plan on feeling this way about Mark." Sam leaned forward earnestly. "Have you talked to him about it?" "No. I can't just drop that bombshell," Jamie replied sharply, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "What if it ruins everything? What if I ruin Lily's happiness? Or what if you're missing out on something incredible?" Sam countered gently. Jamie fell silent again as he considered Sam's words. He felt trapped between loyalty to his sister and his own burgeoning feelings for Mark, a conflict that seemed impossible to resolve. As the bridal shower continued around them, filled with laughter and celebration, Jamie couldn't shake off the feeling that time was running out. The wedding was just days away, and he needed to confront his feelings before it was too late. Later that evening, after everyone had left and only family remained to help clean up, Jamie found himself alone for a brief moment in the dimly lit venue kitchen. He leaned against the counter, heart racing as he replayed every moment shared with Mark over the past few weeks. And then it hit him. He couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when inside he felt like he was unraveling. With newfound determination coursing through him, Jamie knew he had to find a way to express what had been building inside him, a truth that could no longer remain unspoken. The day of Lily's bridal shower dawned bright and sunny, the kind of day that felt like a celebration. In itself, Jamie woke up with a mix of excitement and anxiety swirling in his stomach. He could hear the muffled sounds of laughter and chatter as Lily and their mother prepared for the event, but he felt a strange sense of detachment from it all. As they arrived at the beautifully decorated venue, Jamie was struck by how perfect everything looked. The tables were adorned with pastel flowers and delicate lace, while twinkling fairy lights hung overhead, casting a warm glow throughout the space. Guests began to trickle in, and Jamie forced himself to smile as he greeted friends and family, but his mind kept drifting back to Mark. Throughout the shower, Jamie watched Lily bask in the attention, her laughter ringing out like music. She was radiant, glowing with happiness as she opened gifts and played games with her friends. But every time Jamie caught sight of Mark across the room, his heart would race. Mark was effortlessly charming, engaging everyone around him with his wit and warmth. It was hard not to feel a pang of jealousy mixed with admiration. During one of the games, Lily called for everyone's attention. "Okay, everyone, it's time for the Guess the Bride quiz," she announced excitedly. The guests cheered, and Jamie found himself swept up in the festivities despite his inner turmoil. As the game progressed, Jamie tried to focus on the fun, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Mark. When it was time for a break, he stepped outside for some fresh air, hoping to clear his head. The garden was beautiful, filled with blooming flowers and soft greenery. As he leaned against a railing, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Mind if I join you?" Mark's voice broke through his thoughts. Jamie opened his eyes to see Mark standing there, an easy smile on his face that sent butterflies fluttering in Jamie's stomach. "Sure," he replied, trying to sound casual. Mark leaned against the railing beside him, looking out at the garden. "It's a beautiful day," he said thoughtfully. "Lily really outdid herself." "Yeah," Jamie agreed, glancing sideways at Mark. "She's been planning this for months." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Mark turned to him with a curious expression. "You seem a bit quiet today. Everything okay?" Jamie felt his heart race at the concern in Mark's voice. He wanted to tell him everything, the confusion, the feelings, but fear held him back. "Just trying to take it all in," he said instead. Mark nodded slowly, as if sensing there was more beneath Jamie's words, but choosing not to press further. "I get that," he said softly. Weddings can be overwhelming. Jamie swallowed hard, feeling an urge to reach out and connect on a deeper level. Are you excited about marrying Lily? He asked, trying to keep his tone light. Absolutely, Mark replied, his eyes shining with sincerity. She makes me incredibly happy. Hearing those words sent a pang through Jamie's heart, one that felt both familiar and painful. He forced himself to smile, even as doubt crept into his mind. Good, Jamie said finally. She deserves all the happiness in the world. Just then, Lily stepped outside with a few friends, breaking their moment of intimacy. There you are. Come on back inside. We're about to play another game, she called cheerfully. Mark straightened up and smiled at Jamie before heading back inside with Lily and her friends. As they walked away together, Jamie felt an ache in his chest, a longing that seemed impossible to ignore. The rest of the shower passed in a blur of laughter and games, but Jamie found it increasingly difficult to shake off his feelings for Mark. The more he watched them together, Lily glowing with excitement and Mark radiating warmth, the more conflicted he felt. Later that evening, after most guests had left and only close family remained to help clean up, Jamie found himself alone again for a moment in the quiet venue kitchen. He leaned against the counter, heart racing as he replayed every interaction he'd had with Mark throughout the day. As he stood there lost in thought, Sam entered quietly behind him. Hey, he said softly. You okay? Jamie sighed deeply, feeling overwhelmed by everything swirling inside him. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending, he admitted finally. Sam stepped closer, concern etched on his face. You don't have to pretend with me. I can't help how I feel about Mark, Jamie confessed in a rush. And it's tearing me apart. Sam placed a reassuring hand on Jamie's shoulder. You need to talk to him about it, he urged gently. I can't just drop that on him. Not now, Jamie replied desperately. Why not? You deserve happiness too. Sam insisted that in that moment of vulnerability, Jamie felt something shift within him. A flicker of courage ignited by Sam's words as they finished cleaning up together in silence. Jamie knew that whatever happened next would change everything. He could no longer ignore what lay beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect lives. The bridal shower had come and gone, leaving Jamie in a whirlwind of emotions that felt increasingly difficult to manage. As the wedding day approached, he found himself caught in a cycle of excitement for Lily and despair over his own feelings for Mark. Each time he saw them together, the knot in his stomach tightened, and he knew he had to confront his emotions before it was too late. One evening, after a long day of wedding preparations, Jamie returned home to find Sam sprawled out on the couch, flipping through channels on the television. The apartment was dimly lit, creating a cozy atmosphere that felt inviting yet heavy with unspoken tension. Jamie dropped his bag by the door and sank into an armchair across from Sam. Hey, how was your day? Sam asked without looking away from the screen. Exhausting, Jamie replied, rubbing his temples. I feel like I'm losing my mind with all this wedding stuff. Sam turned off the TV and sat up straight, his expression shifting to one of concern. You've been saying that a lot lately. What's really going on? Jamie hesitated, wrestling with the urge to spill everything. He wanted to confide in Sam, but fear held him back. It's just, I can't stop thinking about Mark, he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Sam leaned forward, eyes intent on Jamie. What about him? I don't know how to handle it, Jamie confessed, feeling vulnerable as he laid bare his feelings. Every time I see him with Lily, it feels like I'm being torn apart inside. Have you talked to him about it? Some presgently. I can't just drop that on him, Jamie replied sharply. What if it ruins everything? What if I ruin Lily's happiness? Or what if you're missing out on something amazing? Sam countered softly. You can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's clearly not. Jamie sighed deeply, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of his emotions. I don't want to hurt anyone, he said, frustration lacing his words. I get that, Sam said, his tone calming. But you also deserve to be happy. You can't keep sacrificing your own feelings for everyone else. Jamie looked down at his hands, feeling the truth in Sam's words but struggling to accept it. I just don't know how to approach him without making things awkward. Maybe start by being honest about your feelings, Sam suggested. You don't have to confess your undying love right away. Just let him know you're struggling. As Jamie considered Sam's advice, a flicker of determination sparked within him. He realized that keeping everything bottled up was only causing more pain. Maybe it was time to take a leap of faith. The next day was filled with wedding rehearsals and last-minute details that kept Jamie busy and distracted. But as evening fell and the rehearsal dinner began, he felt a familiar tension creeping back in. The venue was beautifully decorated, filled with family and friends who were all there to celebrate Lily and Mark's upcoming nuptials. They gathered around the dinner table. Laughter echoed through the room, while Jamie tried to focus on the festivities. But every time he glanced at Mark, who was seated next to Lily, his heart raced with conflicting emotions. After dinner wrapped up and guests began mingling again, Jamie found himself standing alone on the balcony once more, seeking solace in the cool evening air. He leaned against the railing, trying to calm his racing heart when Mark stepped outside. "Hey," Mark said with a warm smile that sent butterflies fluttering in Jamie's stomach. "Hey," Jamie replied, forcing himself to return the smile. Mark leaned beside him against the railing, looking out at the twinkling lights of the city below. "It's nice out here," he said casually. "Yeah," Jamie agreed softly. They stood in silence for a moment before Mark turned to him with an inquisitive look. "You seem a bit off lately. Everything okay?" The question felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Jamie took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his emotions pressing against his chest. This was it, the moment he had been both dreading and yearning for. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," Jamie began hesitantly. "About you and Lily and how happy you make her." Mark nodded slowly but didn't interrupt. "And I guess I'm struggling with my feelings," Jamie continued, feeling vulnerable yet empowered by his honesty. "I didn't expect to develop feelings for you." Mark's expression shifted from curiosity to surprise as he processed Jamie's words. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire ready to snap. "I didn't know you felt that way," Mark finally said softly, searching Jamie's eyes for understanding. "I know it complicates things," Jamie rushed on, anxiety flooding through him as he spoke. "And I don't want to ruin anything between you and Lily. I just needed you to know how I feel." Mark looked thoughtful for a moment before speaking again. "This is unexpected." He took a step closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret between them alone. "I care about Lily deeply. She means everything to me." "I get that," Jamie replied quickly, feeling both relieved and anxious at once. "I would never want you to hurt her." But Mark hesitated before continuing carefully. "I also value our friendship, and I can't ignore what you've just said." Jamie felt hope flicker within him at those words, but also fear at what they might mean for their relationship moving forward. Yes, they stood there under the stars, two souls caught in an intricate web of emotions. Jamie realized that this conversation had opened doors he never expected would be unlocked. The days leading up to the wedding felt like a blur of emotions for Jamie. After his heartfelt conversation with Mark, he was left grappling with a mix of hope and uncertainty. The tension between them hung in the air, unspoken but palpable, and every interaction felt charged with a new intensity. As the wedding day approached, Jamie found himself oscillating between excitement for Lily and anxiety over what his feelings for Mark could mean for their friendship. He tried to focus on supporting Lily, but the weight of his emotions made it increasingly difficult. The night before the wedding, Jamie joined Lily and their family for a final rehearsal dinner at a picturesque restaurant. The atmosphere was festive, filled with laughter and love as everyone gathered to celebrate. Jamie watched as Lily glowed in her happiness, surrounded by friends and family who adored her. But as he glanced at Mark across the table, he felt that familiar ache in his chest. After dinner, as guests mingled and shared stories, Jamie found himself standing alone on the balcony once again. The night was warm, and the stars twinkled above him like tiny diamonds scattered across a velvet sky. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart when he heard footsteps behind him. "Mind if I join you?" Mark asked softly, stepping outside. "Not at all," Jamie replied, forcing a smile as he turned to face him. Mark leaned against the railing beside him, his presence both comforting and electrifying. "It's beautiful out here," he said, glancing up at the stars. "Yeah," Jamie agreed, feeling the weight of their earlier conversation hanging between them. After a moment of silence, Mark turned to him with a serious expression. "I've been thinking about what you said the other night." Jamie's heart raced at those words. "And I value our friendship," Mark began slowly. "And I care about Lily deeply. But I also can't pretend that what you said didn't affect me." Jamie swallowed hard, feeling vulnerable under Mark's gaze. "I didn't want to complicate things," he admitted quietly. "But I couldn't keep it inside anymore." "I appreciate your honesty," Mark replied, his tone sincere. "It's just everything is happening so fast with the wedding tomorrow. I need time to process this." "I understand," Jamie said quickly, feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. "I don't want to put any pressure on you." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "Let's take things one step at a time. We can talk more after the wedding when things settle down." As they stood there together in the cool night air, Jamie felt a flicker of hope amidst his uncertainty. He wanted to believe that there was still a chance for something more between them, something worth exploring once the dust settled from the whirlwind of wedding festivities. The next day was filled with excitement as everyone prepared for Lily's big day. The venue was adorned with flowers and decorations that transformed it into a fairy tale setting. Jamie threw himself into helping with last-minute details, trying to keep his mind occupied as he watched Lily prepare for her moment. As Lily slipped into her wedding dress, a stunning creation that made her look like a princess. Jamie felt tears prick at his eyes. She looked breathtakingly beautiful and radiated joy that was infectious. But as he caught sight of Mark adjusting his tie in another room, Jamie felt that familiar knot tighten in his stomach. During the ceremony, Jamie stood beside Lily as her best man, trying to focus on her happiness while battling his own emotions. The vows exchanged were filled with love and promise, and Jamie couldn't help but feel both elated for Lily and heartbroken for himself. When it came time for the reception, laughter filled the air as family and friends celebrated the newlyweds. Jamie tried to join in on the festivities, but often found himself drifting toward Mark whenever they crossed paths. Each time their eyes met, an unspoken connection flickered between them, a reminder of their earlier conversation. As the night wore on and guests danced under twinkling lights, Jamie finally found himself alone with Mark in a quieter corner of the venue. "Hey," Mark said softly, leaning against the wall beside him. "Hey," Jamie replied, heart racing at their proximity. "I just wanted to check in," Mark continued, his voice low. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," Jamie said quickly, but then hesitated before adding, "It's just seeing you with Lily today was harder than I thought it would be." Mark nodded slowly as if he understood exactly what Jamie meant. "I know it's complicated," he said gently. "I don't want to come between you two," Jamie confessed, feeling raw and exposed. "You're not coming between us," Mark reassured him softly. "Lily is my priority right now. But so are you." Those words sent a rush of warmth through Jamie's chest. They stood there in silence for a moment before Mark took a deep breath. "Can we talk more about this after everything settles down?" he asked earnestly. "Of course," Jamie replied, feeling hopeful yet anxious about what lay ahead. As they returned to join the celebration, Jamie felt a renewed sense of determination within him. He knew that whatever happened next would require honesty and courage from both of them, but perhaps they could navigate this complicated path together. The wedding day arrived with a burst of sunlight that streamed through the windows, illuminating the venue in a golden glow. Jamie woke up with a mix of excitement and anxiety swirling in his stomach. Today was Lily's big day, and despite the emotional turmoil he had been navigating, he wanted nothing more than to support his sister and see her happy. As he arrived at the venue, the air was electric with anticipation. Everywhere he looked, people were bustling about, setting up decorations and preparing for the ceremony. Jamie felt a sense of pride as he watched Lily flit around, her face alight with joy and excitement. She looked stunning in her bridal gown, and seeing her so happy filled him with warmth. However, as the minutes ticked by, Jamie's thoughts kept drifting back to Mark. He hadn't seen him yet that morning, and the uncertainty of their previous conversation lingered in his mind like a shadow. He wanted to talk to Mark to clarify their feelings and what might come next, but today was about Lily. He pushed those thoughts aside as he focused on helping with last-minute details. The ceremony began in a beautiful garden adorned with flowers and twinkling lights. As Jamie stood beside Lily, ready to support her as her best man. He felt a rush of emotions. Love for his sister, mixed with an ache in his heart for what he couldn't have. When Lily walked down the aisle, radiant and glowing, Jamie couldn't help but tear up at how beautiful she looked. As Mark stood at the altar waiting for Lily, Jamie felt a pang of longing. Mark looked handsome in his tailored suit, his eyes shining with love as they locked on Lily's approaching figure. Jamie tried to focus on the vows being exchanged, but every word felt like a reminder of what he was losing. When it was time for the reception, laughter and music filled the air as guests celebrated the newlyweds. Jamie moved through the crowd, congratulating friends and family while trying to keep his emotions in check. But every time he saw Mark laughing or dancing with Lily, it felt like a knife twisting in his heart. Finally, after dinner had been served and the cake had been cut, Jamie found himself alone for a moment on the balcony again. The night air was cool against his skin as he leaned against the railing, trying to gather his thoughts. Just then, he heard footsteps behind him. "Mind if I join you?" Mark asked softly. "Not at all," Jamie replied, turning to face him. Mark stepped outside and leaned against the railing beside Jamie. They stood in silence for a moment before Mark spoke again. "You okay?" Jamie took a deep breath, feeling vulnerable but determined to be honest. "I'm trying to be," he admitted. "Today has been a lot." Mark nodded in understanding. "I know it's complicated," he said softly, "but I want you to know that I care about you." Those words sent warmth flooding through Jamie's chest. "I care about you too," he replied earnestly. Mark hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I've been thinking about our conversation more than I expected," he confessed. "And I don't want to ignore what we have." Jamie felt hope blossom within him at those words, but also fear about what it could mean for their friendship and for Lily. "What does that mean for us?" he asked cautiously. "I don't know yet," Mark admitted honestly. "But I want to explore this, whatever this is, after everything settles down." Jamie nodded slowly, feeling both relieved and anxious about what lay ahead. "I just don't want to hurt anyone," he said quietly. Mark turned to him, searching his eyes for understanding. "Neither do I," he said firmly. "But we also deserve happiness." As they stood there under the stars, two souls caught in an intricate dance of emotions, Jamie felt a flicker of hope amidst the uncertainty. He knew that whatever happened next would require honesty from both of them. Just then, Lily stepped outside looking for them. "There you are! Come on! We're about to start dancing!" she exclaimed with excitement. Mark smiled at Jamie before turning back toward Lily. As they rejoined the festivities, Jamie felt a renewed sense of determination within him. He knew that whatever challenges lay ahead could be faced together, and perhaps they could navigate this complicated path without losing what mattered most. As they danced under twinkling lights, surrounded by friends and family celebrating love, Jamie couldn't help but feel grateful for this moment. A reminder that even amidst uncertainty, there was beauty in connection and hope for what could be. The day after the wedding dawned with a soft light filtering through the curtains, casting a warm glow. In Jamie's apartment, the festivities of the previous night felt like a beautiful dream. But as he lay in bed, the reality of his emotions settled heavily on his chest. He had spent the night celebrating Lily and Mark's love, yet his heart was still tangled in its own complicated feelings. Jamie rolled over and glanced at his phone, half hoping for a message from Mark. But there was nothing, just the quiet hum of his thoughts echoing in his mind. He knew they needed to talk, to address the unspoken words that hung between them like a delicate thread waiting to snap. As he got up and prepared for the day, Jamie felt a sense of determination growing within him. He couldn't keep avoiding the conversation any longer. After all the joy of the wedding, he needed clarity for himself and for Mark. Later that afternoon, Jamie decided to go for a walk to clear his head. The sun was shining brightly, and people bustled around him, enjoying the weekend. But as he walked through the park, his mind kept drifting back to Mark. He replayed their conversations in his head, the shared glances, the moments of connection that felt electric. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of deliberation, Jamie pulled out his phone and sent a message to Mark. "Can we talk? I need to see you." He paced back and forth as he waited for a response, anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed with a reply. "Absolutely." How about my place in an hour? Jamie's heart raced at the thought of finally confronting everything they had left unsaid. He quickly made his way to Mark's apartment, each step filled with anticipation and uncertainty. When he arrived, Mark opened the door with a warm smile that sent butterflies fluttering in Jamie's stomach. "Hey," Mark said softly, stepping aside to let Jamie in. "Hey," Jamie replied, trying to mask his nerves with a smile. They settled into the living room, sitting across from each other on the couch. The atmosphere was charged with an unspoken tension as they both searched for the right words. "I've been thinking about everything," Mark began, breaking the silence. "About what you said at the wedding and how we left things." "Me too," Jamie admitted, feeling a rush of vulnerability wash over him. "I don't want to complicate your life with Lily or ruin anything between us." Mark leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. "You're not complicating anything by being honest about your feelings," he said gently. "I care about you, Jamie." Hearing those words sent warmth flooding through Jamie's chest. "I care about you too," he replied earnestly. "But I also know that Lily is important to you." "She is," Mark acknowledged, running a hand through his hair as he thought carefully about his next words. "But I can't ignore what we have either." Jamie felt a mix of hope and fear at Mark's admission. "What do you want?" he asked softly. Mark took a deep breath before answering. "I want to explore this connection between us, whatever it may be, but I also want to be honest with Lily about everything." The weight of those words hung heavily in the air between them. Jamie felt both exhilarated and terrified at the prospect of stepping into uncharted territory. "I don't want to hurt her," Jamie said again, feeling conflicted. "I know," Mark replied softly. "But we can't deny our feelings either. It wouldn't be fair to any of us if we didn't address this." Jamie nodded slowly as he processed Mark's words. The idea of being honest with Lily was daunting, but necessary if they were going to move forward. "Okay," Jamie said finally, feeling a surge of courage within him. "Let's figure this out together." Mark smiled at him, an expression filled with warmth and understanding that made Jamie's heart race. They sat in silence for a moment, letting their thoughts settle before moving forward. "Let's talk to Lily together," Mark suggested gently. "I think she deserves to know how we feel." Jamie felt both relieved and anxious at that suggestion, but knew it was the right thing to do. "Yeah," he agreed quietly. Together, as they sat there on the couch, two friends navigating their feelings amidst uncertainty. Jamie realized that whatever happened next would require honesty and courage from all three of them. He took a deep breath as he looked into Mark's eyes, feeling hopeful for what lay ahead. A chance for love that could blossom amidst complexity if they faced it together. The days that followed their conversation felt like a whirlwind of emotions for Jamie. He and Mark had agreed to talk to Lily together, but the thought of that conversation loomed over him like a dark cloud. Each day brought a mix of anticipation and anxiety, and Jamie found himself oscillating between hope for the future and fear of the unknown. Finally, the day arrived when they would sit down with Lily. Jamie had spent the morning pacing his apartment, rehearsing what he wanted to say. He wanted to be honest without hurting her, but he also knew that honesty was essential for all of them to move forward. When he arrived at Lily's apartment, he felt his heart racing in his chest. Mark was already there, waiting in the living room. He looked up as Jamie entered, offering a reassuring smile that helped calm Jamie's nerves, if only slightly. "Hey," Mark said softly. "You ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Jamie replied, forcing a smile. They waited for Lily to arrive, and as they sat in silence, Jamie felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The door swung open moments later, and Lily walked in with a bright smile that made Jamie's heart ache. "Hey, I'm so glad you both could make it," she exclaimed, her excitement palpable. "I've been dying to hear about your plans for the future." Jamie exchanged a glance with Mark, both of them knowing that this was the moment they had been preparing for. "Actually, Lily," Mark began hesitantly, "there's something important we need to talk about." Lily's expression shifted from excitement to curiosity as she took a seat across from them. "What is it?" Jamie took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words pressing against his chest. "It's about us, about me and Mark," he said slowly. That Lily's eyes widened slightly as she processed what he was saying. "What do you mean?" Mark leaned in closer, his voice steady but gentle. "We've developed feelings for each other," he explained carefully. "And we wanted you to know because we value our friendship with you." The room fell silent as Lily absorbed their words. Jamie watched her face closely, searching for any sign of how she might react. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. I, I didn't expect this," she said slowly, her voice trembling slightly. "But I appreciate you both being honest with me." Jamie felt a rush of relief wash over him at her response, but also anxiety about where this conversation would lead. "We didn't want to hide anything from you," he said earnestly. "You mean too much to us." Lily took a deep breath, her expression thoughtful as she processed everything. "I care about both of you," she said finally, "and I want you both to be happy." Mark nodded in agreement, his eyes filled with understanding. "We don't want to hurt you or disrupt your life," he reassured her. "I just wish I had known sooner," Lily admitted softly, looking between them with a mixture of emotions on her face. "But I can see how much you both care about each other." Jamie felt a wave of gratitude wash over him at Lily's response. It wasn't easy for her to hear this news, but her strength and understanding shone through. "I want us all to remain friends," Lily continued after a moment of silence. "This doesn't have to change everything." Jamie felt tears prick at his eyes as he realized how fortunate they were to have such an open and honest conversation. "Thank you for being so understanding," he said sincerely as they continued talking, sharing their feelings and fears. The atmosphere shifted from tension to relief. They discussed boundaries and what this meant for their relationships moving forward. By the end of their conversation, Jamie felt lighter than he had in weeks. They had faced their fears together and emerged stronger on the other side. As they hugged goodbye later that evening, Lily pulling them both into an embrace. Jamie felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but they would face them together as friends who cared deeply for one another. As he walked home with Mark by his side, Jamie couldn't help but feel hopeful about what lay ahead. A chance for love that could blossom amidst complexity if they all continued to communicate openly and honestly. In that moment, under the soft glow of streetlights illuminating their path forward, Jamie felt ready to embrace whatever came next.